Well, tonight we have Markel Morris speaking about creating a career you love after loss. Markel is a career counselor and coach with more than 20 years of experience. She is the author of Fast Track Your Career, second edition, and Create a Career You Love, 5 Steps to Define Your Next Career Move. Markel understands the dynamics of loss, grief, and restarting a career from her own personal experience, too. She unexpectedly became a widow when her husband, Mark, died suddenly just weeks before their first anniversary. A few months later, she received a brain tumor diagnosis and spent the next year in treatment. After her recovery, she stood at her own crossroads. She had to figure out how to reestablish her employment and reinvent her career. In addition to her work with Futures in Motion, Inc., Markel is an associate faculty member at Santa Monica College General Counseling and Transfer Services and an adjunct career counselor at Cypress College Career Planning Center in California. She serves as past president and finance co-chair of the California Career Development Association, as a volunteer grief group facilitator at New Hope Grief Support Community in Long Beach, California, and on the board of directors for the Hope for Widows Foundation. She received her master's degree in counseling from the University of San Diego and her bachelor degree in sociology from UC Santa Barbara. Go Gauchos. Markel, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bobby. This is, I've done this session before. I've addressed the Widow Village before, and it's always so difficult at first because it brings me back to the early days after Mark passed and I had the recovery from the brain tumor and standing at that crossroads and navigating grief and loss, but also having to make a living, but also wanting to have meaning in my life and career. And Soaring Spirits has provided me with an opportunity to share my journey of healing and rebuilding and re-engaging, and hopefully giving others hope that they can do that as well. So I am, you really did a great job of introducing me and my background. I sound very impressive, you know, but thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And can you see you can see the presentation?
Sure do.
All right, great. And so I will just briefly, go through, but the reason why I do this, part of it is selfish. It's an opportunity for me to have to redeem my circumstances, if you will. Having gone through so many difficult experiences in a short amount of time, there was something in me that was striving to make some sense of meaning and have a sense of purpose through all of this. It was so heavy. And the other part of it is that I really want to be able to provide a place of hope for people who have experienced similar loss to mine and circumstances, so that you can see a way forward with that. So professionally, I am a career counselor and coach, and I've been doing this for many years. I work with clients one-on-one, and as Bobby mentioned, I also am a faculty member at a couple local community colleges. I speak and write on career success topics, but also helping people who have experienced and faced loss and other personal challenges rebuild their careers, re-engage their careers, and find meaning and purpose again and in their lives, and particularly in their careers. So I'm on all the platforms. You can connect with me in all those places. And what I really am going to share with you today are the first steps. And my advice to you as you're listening through to this, and if you have questions, feel free to stop me at any time, but now may be the perfect time for you to hear this. For some of you, it may be a little soon to hear this. You're not quite ready, but you will want to engage with this at a point in the future, and that is totally fine. When I started in this process, I wasn't ready, but I needed to do it. Take what you need and leave the rest behind. And just move forward in that way. But I'm going to share the first steps that you can take to move forward. And I have this within the context of career, but I've guided people through this process who are not so much focused on career, but really looking at a meaningful way to spend their time and their life after their person had passed away. And so whether they were looking for a hobby or they were looking for a slight adjustment to their career or a complete career change, this process helped them to really get clarity about what that is. So again, I'm sharing from my personal and professional experience. When my husband, Mark, passed away unexpectedly, I wasn't working full time and I had to go back to work full time. And initially, I couldn't be selective about the work that I was doing. I just needed an income quick. I had, the bills don't stop when the person passes away, the bills don't stop. And I had a mortgage and other bills. But once I started getting a little bit more settled and feeling that I was a little bit more stable, I started thinking beyond about my basic needs. And I started thinking more about a sense of meaning and purpose. When I have to be honest, when my husband Mark passed away, and after having gone through my brain tumor diagnosis and treatment and healing, I was tired. Life was hard, and I was tired of fighting life, and I was just going to kind of dial it in forever. But then I realized I was kind of too young for that. My point of reference was my grandmother died at 97. And so I'm like, wow, if I live that long, I have a very long time in front of me to just kind of dial it in. But even though as a career counselor, I knew what to do, I didn't know what to do. But so I asked myself, what would I do if I was working with a client in my situation? And I remembered, I'm like, oh, wait, I wrote this book and I wrote all these articles and I have all this professional training. And so I kind of took myself on as a client and started doing, some of these things that I'm going to share with you. And through over time and with these actions that I took, I was able to reimagine what my future could be. And I was able to define what I wanted and what I needed and how I was able to pick up the pieces that brought me to where I'm at today. So my husband, Mark, passed away. It's been 9 years for me now. And I've been involved with Soaring Spirits and Camp Widow specifically for just about 4 years. It feels like a lot longer, but I've been attending camps in San Diego and Toronto. I was just in Toronto a couple weeks ago for the second time. And so if you had asked me 9 years ago, would I be doing this? Would I be smiling? Would I be happy? Would I have a sense of purpose or fulfillment? I couldn't see it. I just could not see it at that time. And so hopefully I can be a source of hope for you that while it may feel really hard and overwhelming right now, over time, you can, get to a place of hope and satisfaction and a sense of purpose and meaning in your life and your career. So I want to pause really briefly, and this is something that is really important for me to share with you. Is I want to pause and ask you to think about something for a moment that you're proud of having accomplished since your person died. And if anybody has something that comes to mind that they'd like to share, you can type it in the chat, or you can, sure, Jade.
I got accepted to a master's program since my husband died, and I also passed the TEAS nursing exam. So I don't know which one of those I'm going to do, but I've gotten to where I can do either one of those. So I have two really good options for a career.
Great. That's awesome. Congratulations. What's the master's program?
Psychology.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? One more? No. So the reason I had you think about this is that one of the practices I started after my husband passed away was to be intentional about focusing on the things that I was able to do. And some days I was able to get up and make myself breakfast. Other days it was a little bit bigger, but I had to learn how to train myself to really focus on my capabilities. And because it's really hard, as you all are experiencing, you have mixed feelings, it's up and down. Some of you are feeling a potpourri I heard in there, surviving, just kind of treading water, marking time. And because life after loss is really difficult, especially in the early days, but we have a different sense of how life can be really challenging and hard. And so we can lose sight of what our capabilities are because we feel so overwhelmed. We feel a little bit confused, maybe discouraged in that. And so this mindset shift is really important to rebuilding your life and your career. And I want to share with you, Bobby did share a little bit about this, but I kind of want to share how the timeframes within which all of this happened. So for me, I unexpectedly was separated from my employment, and that was at the beginning of 2012. So at the beginning of that year, and at the time I wasn't married. My husband and I got reconnected. We met each other when we were children. So we had met when we were about 8 or 9 years old on the playground and or the baseball fields. And then we went to junior high and high school, but we didn't date or anything until much later in life. And so that same month we got connected and we started dating. And then just a short time after that, we got engaged and we were excited and we got married that same year. So that was a whirlwind year. And I thought, okay, this is awesome. We're going to have a family and we're going to have, all the things that we had dreamed of having in our lives. And then 11 months later, my husband passed away unexpectedly from a massive heart attack. And he was just 43 years old. So, and I was with him when it happened, and that was hard, but also kind of good because I knew he didn't suffer. And that was like a weird thing out of that experience. It's not easy to see the person, anybody, but especially the person that you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with, die. But I knew he didn't suffer. And so I took some comfort in that I was able to be there at his last moments and that he didn't suffer. And then I found myself similar to where you all are now with all of I felt shell-shocked, overwhelmed, grief-stricken, heartbroken. You've heard people die of a broken heart, and I really felt that. I really felt that. And I just didn't know what to do. Like I said, I had to go back to work. Fortunately, I was able to find something to pay my bills. And 9 months later, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And I thought, oh, okay. Now what do I do? So I had to go, I went through that whole process. Fortunately, it was discovered in time for it to be removed. And I went through the whole treatment process and recovery process, and I'm okay. But everything happened in a very short time frame. All of this happened, and I didn't know how to make sense of it. And this kind of is what I felt like. I was standing in destruction. My life felt like this picture, but there was one good thing in this. And it's not obvious at first, but what I discovered over time and with what I'm going to share with you is that while I had a destroyed life, my dreams were shattered, my path was altered, I was standing in the rubble, paralyzed, I didn't know what to do. I was standing on a foundation. So even in a destroyed home, there's a concrete foundation that you can use to rebuild from. And so I set about this process of rebuilding around the solid foundation. And this was at the tail end of the hardest years of my life. After experiencing all of these things, being devastated, heartbroken, and confused, I had no idea how to move forward. This is my husband, Mark. These are some of our photos that we took, and his favorites. So we weren't married that long, so these were short, in the time frame that we had been dating and married. And I felt like I was dropped into this place in a desert. And again, there's another good thing being dropped in the middle of the desert. If you can find the North Star, you can find your way home. And so I said about that, but I had all these questions, having been through all of this, what do I do now? Is like, this is going to be my life, just devastation and destruction, for forever. Is it always going to be this hard? Am I always going to have to be picking myself up? Is there more for me? you know, is there something else that's out there for me, and where do I go from here? And I had no answers. Maybe you're feeling this way as well. I had no answers. Not only did I not know what to do with my, you know, career, or just what to do next in my day, I really had a crisis of existence. Like, what am I even here for? Like, why did I go through all of these things? What am I supposed to do with all of this? And as I was, you know, talking with different people, one of the things that people would say is like, oh, the best is yet to come, you know, or gosh, okay, really, no, I couldn't, I didn't believe it. You need to get a new vision for your life, you know, go and do all of the things that you always wanted to do. And, you know, I was really stubborn at first. I'm like, I don't want a new vision for my life. I like the vision that I had, you know, the one that included Mark. And the things that I wanted to do with him. And he's not here anymore. So there, I'm done, you know, kind of thing. And I was really kind of, you know, petulant about it. And I think that many of you can relate to that. But and then I appeared strong on the outside. Anybody else hear this? Oh, you're so strong. You're so strong. But I was falling apart. You know, I was devastated. I was miserable. And all I wanted was for Mark to still be with me. And he wasn't here. And if he was here, I wouldn't be miserable anymore. And this nightmare I was living would be over. But I had to finally get to the place of acceptance that he wasn't here any longer. I would only have his memory, to have those wonderful pictures. He wasn't coming back. And as not hard, but painful as it was going to be, I had to learn how to live life without him. And makes me emotional. And I had to learn how to dream again without him as part of those dreams. And it was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. But I wanted to live a life that was more than just misery, more than just marking time, more than just going through the motions, more than just surviving. But I couldn't define what that was for me. So I set about searching, reading books, you know, watching inspirational content. And I found myself getting to the place of a little bit of hope. Like, if they could do it, if other people who've experienced devastation could find a way to have a meaningful life, to laugh again, to have a sense of purpose again, I can do it as well. And things can get better. And I started, you know, believing that. And after a lot of soul searching, a lot of inner work, I was able to reclaim my future and establish my career. And the lessons that I learned that I want to share with you, and I want to leave you with, is that you do need a vision for your life. And as difficult as it is, you owe it to yourself. You're still here. You owe it to yourself to figure out what that can look like for you. And I also learned that I had to be intentional about it, and I had to be consistent with how I went about cultivating the future that I wanted. So it wasn't going to just happen for me. It wasn't going to happen overnight. It was going to take time, and it was going to take some effort on my part. And I also learned that I had to take action and take steps even when I was afraid, and even when I was unsure. I had to do it afraid. So those were some of the things that I learned. So as we came up, as I got to this place, and I started wondering about all of these things, and I didn't have the answer, I realized that the good news is that rebuilding my life and my career didn't have to be hard, because I had some foundation. I'm a career counselor, you know, and I had some tools at my disposal. So I thought to myself, well, how do I get that vision? How do I go about getting that vision? So I want to ask you, and you can either answer this or you can just consider this. You know, when you think about creating a career that you love or having a meaningful career moving forward, what comes to mind for you? Making a difference for others. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Helping people. Okay. Something with purpose. being able to support your family. Mhm. One of the hard parts about redefining my future, excuse me, and getting a vision for my life and my career was that honoring Ed, is that I had to define it. But the positive thing is you get to define it. You get to define who you want to be now and how you want to experience life moving forward, finding something where I can combine skill and passion. Yes. And at first that was difficult, but also gave me a sense of hope. It gave me a sense of of hope that there was something that I could do. So you get to decide what it looks like to honor Ed. What does that look like for you? You may not know today, but you might know. You have the opportunity to give yourself the chance to define what that's going to look like for you. I love my job. I'm a medical provider. It's hard to go back because I saw, yes, okay, but I have to go back to work. How do you re-engage, Jody, with the work that you do so that it's more satisfying and perhaps less draining and overwhelming? So this is a framework that I want to share with you. It's Ikigai. Some of you may be familiar with this concept, but in defining the future that you want, these are some important components to that. So being able to define, what you love to do, the needs that the world has, what you might get paid to do, and what you're really good at doing. And one way that you can do this, you could simply just get a notepad and over time start asking yourself these questions. What do I really love to do? And it could be, I love walking at the beach, or I love cooking, this particular dish, or whatever it may be. And it may be that some of the ideas that you have don't seem to make a connection, but over time, you'll start to see a connection. You'll start to see things that you might want to do more of and invest your time in more, and think something that you can look forward to. I started doing these things, and it gave me something to hold on to. It gave me a sense of purpose where I didn't have one. Another way that you can begin to define a future for yourself, and I came across this, make your vision so clear that your fears become irrelevant. The fear had become a part of my life in a way that I didn't have fear before. And when I couldn't see in front of me, remember when you were a kid and you thought there were monsters under the bed? And that's kind of like what my future felt like. I couldn't see in front of me. I saw kind of like a hazy, cloudy, foggy in front of me. And for surely there are more things that will harm me. Surely the boogeyman is in front of me. But the more clear I got about the future that I wanted and who I was in that, the less fear that I felt and the more confidence that I felt in my ability to take steps forward. But these are also some questions that you might ask yourself. And these are some questions that were really, really helpful for me. If you could be anything, what would that be? If you could do anything, what would you do? If you could have anything, what would that be? What would you have? And again, you may have some ready questions for this, but it may be over time that you come up with questions. Honestly, I took these questions and I put them at the top of a notebook, and I kept a notebook with me for a period of time. And as I started writing my answers, and over time, I started recycling. I kept coming back. I'm like, okay, there's something here. There's something here. So as I started giving myself the opportunity and allowing myself to imagine who I could be, what I could do, and what I could have, a future started forming for myself. A vision started forming for myself. And I wrote my answers as if I already had them. So one of the things that was challenging for me was having confidence in my ability to move forward in my life and my career. So I wrote my answers as if I had confidence. So I am confident. I have the ability to make good decisions. I am a good steward of my resources. I will pay my bills. I am paying my bills. Though whatever it is for you, you can write it as if that, and it doesn't always have to be related to your career. It's just whatever comes to mind about that, and it can inform your career. It can help you to develop the confidence that you need. Okay. It can help you develop the confidence and the clarity that you need to move forward. And I have a notebook that I use. In fact, I'm going to be guiding a group of people through this process in December. Another tool that you might use is a vision board. So I use these tools and these processes to help my clients imagine possibilities and build their confidence. I did all of these things. I did the vision board, I did the journaling, I did the imagining. And initially, when I first started doing this topic, I called it Activate Hope. And I called it that because those are the things that I did that activated my hope, that sparked my hope and that inspiration to take the little tentative steps forward. And initially, it was really hard for me, I have to be honest. But as I started doing these exercises, I really got excited and I started getting more energized about what was possible for me. It helped me explore. It gave me something to talk about with other people, and it gave me a chance to be creative and to dream big. And as I finished doing these exercises, I chose a couple items to start with. And again, building on my accomplishments, taking one baby step helped me to build my sense of confidence, and it gave me an accomplishment. And I just continued doing them over and over again. And it was really fun. And eventually it was fun and really helpful to me. And so again, I put all of this together into a program, a coaching program, and I've been guiding people through this process for many years now. I've done in-person retreats around this process, online, and one-on-one programs with that. And in addition, I wrote these guides that all go along with this exploration career discovery process. So while I experienced devastation, the devastating loss of my husband, and then facing, my own mortality with a brain tumor, I feel very fortunate that I had the wherewithal to go through this process and then be able to channel it into resources that can in turn help other people. It gave me an outlet. It gave me, when I look at this, it's bittersweet, right? I wouldn't have done any of this if Mark was still alive at all. So there's that part of it, but he did die. And I was able to use my experiences in a meaningful and purposeful way, and moving forward, continue to do that. So that duality that we experience, right? That duality of loss. And so as you start formulating a vision for the future that you want, and particularly as it relates to career, then the exploration piece is important. And I'm going to talk with you a little bit about this. It's an art, not a science, figuring out how to bridge, the vision with the realities of life, but it requires curiosity and action. So if you got this far, you've already given yourself the opportunity to be curious. You've already decided that you were going to allow yourself to imagine, what if I did this? What if I could do that? And so your confidence will come from clarity, and the clarity then is going to come through the action, what it's actually going to look like. I'll share with you that the big vision that I had after going through this, evaluation process was I wanted to do destination-based transformational retreats. That was big because I love to travel. I'm a counselor, I'm a teacher, I develop curriculum, and I like public speaking. And I thought, wow, this would be, and I've had transformational experiences after having faced the loss. And so I thought those are ways that that's something that can incorporate all of these things that mean something to me in like a really fun way. And so I wasn't overwhelmed by that big vision because I had learned how to take small baby steps intentionally over time. Eventually I'll get there, but even if I don't, the journey is going to be so interesting and meaningful and character building. And so it's shifted. Yes, I'm familiar with Toastmasters. It shifted, going through this process, shifted my whole entire outlook of what meaning and purpose looks like in my life and my career. So in gaining this exploration and insight, this also is a place for you to determine your priorities in your life and your career. So we have lots of ideas, we have lots of interests perhaps, but we do have things that we need to address and focus on first. and our priorities. And this is also a way I'm going to show you some tools that can help you to define the tools and talents that you want to use. Many people I've learned and experienced, especially people who seek out grief support and people who find their way to soaring spirits, are resourceful. And they're the kind of people who typically are very skilled in many things and have natural talents and abilities that they often undervalue. And so put them in a situation, they're going to figure out how to navigate through it. And that's a great thing. But the other side of it is that we may not, and you may not have a reliable way to evaluate the skills and talents that you enjoy using the most. And especially moving forward with all the chaos and confusion of rebuilding your life after loss, being able to discern those skills and talents that bring you joy to use in a meaningful way. And so some of the tools that I use and I recommend are the Myers-Briggs that you might be familiar with, a strong interest inventory, a skill scan is a tool that I use, and the Clifton Strengths. So these are an example of some of the career assessments that I use in addition to the workbooks and the reflective activities. And what this enables people to do is you've got a little bit of a vision, and then you get some more concrete personal insight about where you are right now as it relates to your personal characteristics, your present interests, your skills, natural abilities, and how all of that can support you moving towards your vision and having that meaningful life and career. And again, some of you are looking at this from the perspective of career navigation and re-engaging or redirecting your career. Some of you are fine in the career, but perhaps this can be instrumental in how you spend that time outside of work and how the meaning that you get from your activities outside of work. Other resources that I use for exploration are the ONED and Career One Stop Unemployment, EDD, the Employment Development Department. I think most of us are in the United States. Some of us are in California. And so these are some other resources that I use. These are my go-to resources. And this is just a helpful way to bridge all the kind of squishy, vision-y type stuff with the realities of, actual jobs and how to position yourself for that. I want to pause to see if there are any questions or comments. No, we're good.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
For those of us who are either not looking to change careers or not looking for a career, I just retired actually. Not the greatest of timing, but I did just retire and I am looking for purpose. Are any of these websites, would you recommend any of them in that direction or more the, I forget what you called the circular graph of finding
I would say the circular graph, the visioning type things can be really helpful to you. And then the career assessments that I mentioned can be helpful to you. So I have had people who've gone through my programs and attended my workshops similar position to you, Jeff. They weren't looking for work. They were in retirement, but they were searching for a meaningful way to use their time. And through going through these exercises, they were able to identify what that would look like for them. So it can work too in your situation.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Yes. And I can give you a couple examples. And one example, someone who went through this, what they discovered was that they had an interest in supporting children, not young children per se, but people who had lost a parent and in grief support, and then was able to reach out, seek out an organization where they could volunteer. And that was something that they discovered would be meaningful for them. Another example is someone discovered that they just really enjoyed gardening and being in the garden. And that's what they wanted to make sure that they had time to garden and see their friends. And that was what would bring them meaning in their retirement without their spouse. Jade?
I think one of my general questions is like, as a widow, and especially if your husband was the sole provider, um, I was a stay-at-home mom for 12 years. I have a degree and I did have a job, but I stayed home for a really long time. Um, and I think a lot of us are lucky enough that we had, hopefully some life insurance or something that we kind of don't, that help, um, or the social security benefits or whatever it is. But my question really is like, kind of like, if you are trying to get back on your feet with a career, because you have to go back to work, especially if you haven't done it in so long. I have a lot of people who are like telling me, oh, you have to do nursing because, I mean, I know it's not their choice, but you have to do nursing because that will put food on the table and it'll give you so many more opportunities. You'll always have a job. And then, my passion is more in psychology, which I won't get paid as much for. It's really hard because I do have to provide. And so it's picking like practicality over passion. And I don't find that really difficult.
Practical, I'm going to write that down. Because it is difficult. And the reality is, Jade, thank you for asking that, because I think that might be relatable to others. The reality is that you have to balance the practicality with the passion. And it's not necessarily an all or nothing. It's what do I need to do? What do I need right now on my way to the future that I want? And, the reality is you have bills, you have, children of a certain age, you have to do that, and probably have to address that sooner than later. Whereas the passion might take a little bit more time. And so I think the strategy is to kind of look at the big picture, the longer term, but look at what you need in the shorter term that's going to put you in the best possible position for the longer term. And I can share an example with you of a client that I worked with. Her husband had passed away, and she was in the fortunate position to have Social Security and life insurance support for her kids. They were young at the time, and so for 17 years she was but she was a mom, and that was her focus. But then her kids got to the age where their benefits were going to run out, and therefore she wasn't going to have the benefits, and she hadn't worked in 17 years. And so she came to me like, what do I do? What do I do? And so we went through this process, and she identified what she wanted to do longer term. But in order for her to do that longer term, there was she had to build a resume. She had to get some work. And so we came up with a plan for her, actually just to kind of get a seasonal job so she can get herself back into the job market. That was an easy thing to do for her, and to start building a resume, remember what it was like to have coworkers again and a paycheck, and just start building her employability skills and her confidence. And she ended up doing so well in that job that they offered her a full-time position. And then a year later, she came back. She's like, I did what you told me. It was great. It was awesome. Now I'm ready to go for that dream job. So that's a real example of a widowed person who had to balance practicality with passion. And Jim had a question.
Yeah, hi, Markel. And thank you, Jade, for asking that. That kind of her question and your answer did help me, but I'm in a different situation. I had a great career. I wasn't happy in it, but I made great money and I was really good at it. And I decided to leave it after my wife died. So I've since paid off my debt. I'm not young enough to be able to retire, but I need to find something with purpose. And the challenge for me is identifying where my current skills may be applied to a new career. Do you have any suggestions for resources for kind of honing in on that?
Yeah, without sounding like a broken record, I would say that allowing yourself to evaluate not only your hard skills, but again, and using the frameworks that I presented are really helpful frameworks for people at different stages in their career. But really, of the skills, what's the intersection of the skills that you enjoy using and that bring you satisfaction? The type of work that you enjoy doing that brings you satisfaction, like the outcomes that you achieve that are most satisfying to you. Looking at your lifestyle preferences, what kind of lifestyle that you want to have, and then what you can get paid for. Look at the intersection of that. And that's what you maybe leverage your future on as strategically. And then again, this may be longer term, this might be a couple years out, but then but it gives you a sort of a beacon or like a lighthouse to work towards. And so then what you can do now that's going to bring you closer to that future target. And I can talk with you more offline about this directly, but strategically, it's really about defining the big picture future that you want, but looking at the assets that you have to support that, your hard skills, your network, your professional accomplishments, your knowledge, all of those things, how they all work together to support the bigger picture future that you want, but you need to know what your target is first.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's part of the challenge, but yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
The challenge, it is that I'm not sure what the challenge is specifically as you're processing it. It is challenging because it feels a little bit squishy. And one of the things that I had to do, and I'll share with you, is trust the process. So when I set about doing this, I didn't know if it was going to work for me at all. I was very skeptical, but I was also desperate, to figure it out. And so I'm like, hey, I have nothing to lose. I'm standing here with, at this crossroads. My life is, I hate it, and I was miserable, and I'm like, hey, it can't hurt. Let me try it. And I just gave myself the opportunity just to see what was possible for me, and it worked.
I like that. Having nothing to lose is definitely where I feel like I'm at right now. So I definitely relate. Thank you.
I mean, really, we're standing there. We have nothing more to lose. We've lost everything that was important to us. Nothing. So I was like, okay, I can only go up from there. So, and then this leads me to mindset and motivation. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about this because this was the other part of it. You can do all the brainstorming and all the visioning and reflection and all of that you want, but really the mindset and motivation is what's really going to get you from there to here. And I was a positive person before. And I, believed in positive thinking, but, this was like a whole other thing. After my husband passed away, I'm unemployed and I have brain tumor. There's not enough positive thinking in the world that can really carry you through that. So I had to really work on my mindset to get me to keep me moving forward. Oops, I didn't mean to go that far. So you must learn a new way to think before you can master a new way to be. And so that's where, again, the brainstorming did help me, but I developed, I journaled quite a lot, and I did a lot of reframing and affirming. And that's why that exercise was so helpful. What do I want to do? What do I want to be? What I want to have, and framing them into I statements, because those were affirming for me. So even though I didn't have it, even though I wasn't doing it, even though I didn't feel like I was that person, translating those into I statements, your brain doesn't know the difference. So if you start telling your brain that you do this, you have this, you are this, it believes it, and your behavior starts falling in line with that. So this was a way for me to, quiet those voices that are saying, are you sure you want to do that? What if it doesn't work out? Isn't, what you have enough? Like, don't rock the boat right now, or aren't you too old for that? I was getting older as I was going through this process. So, the ones that I really want to kind of focus on are like the mindset, and especially gratitude. And actually in my social media and with my subscribers, I'm guiding people through a 4-day gratitude challenge, because this was something that was really important to me. And I'll talk more about that. Reframing and affirming. We already know the power of community. You're all in a community. We're all in a community through Soaring Spirits and the Widow Village. And that grief support is very important. journaling and self-care, which I know that you talk a lot about in your group. But, you know, grief fog is a real thing. Widow brain, we've heard. Things get confusing and it's a real thing. And so the power of a positive mindset is something that allows us to work through all the fog. So the gratitude for me is a cornerstone of a positive mindset. It's something that I really intentionally started focusing on after my husband passed away, and I continue to do every day. So every morning I have a moment of gratitude, and every night before I go to bed, I have a moment of gratitude. I'm a big believer in this. And again, it reorients my fake it until you make it. Yeah, sometimes you kind of have to, but it reorients my brain again into what I have and not what I'm lacking, you know, both a material, attitude, everything. And so I really am a big believer in that. You could do all kinds of different ways. You could have a gratitude jar. You could have, you know, a list. There's a photo there of 2 notebooks that I use, and I would just carry a notebook. I have my phone now, but I would carry those notebooks with me everywhere. And all those reflection questions I had, I just write my ideas in there. My gratitude, I'd write it in there. I mean, I would always write it in there. If I happen to be talking with somebody and they said something that was really positive and I'm like, oh, I want to remember that, I wrote it in there, and I have a whole document. It's got pages and pages of affirmations and quotes and you know, positive, uplifting things. So I was really intentional about curating an existence that was positive and affirming for myself. And so I'm a really big believer in that, in doing that. Is anyone doing anything like this?
Just meditation, you know,
Meditation.
gratitude meditations, you know, or they're easy to start your day with, especially. And need to be better at doing it at night. I tend to put on my tablet and watch TV. That's bad.
Yeah, well, you know, you do what you can as you can do it. Great, yeah. This is another reframe and affirm. So the words you speak become the house you live in. So, and this is very important. You know, we can be our own worst critics. We can be our biggest roadblocks. You know, even without realizing it, we can say things that our brain converts into reality and expresses into action. And so that's why it's so important to be mindful of the words that you say to yourself, as well. Gratitude takes what makes what we have enough. Exactly. And as well as, you know, the positive words that we feed into our existence. So, you know, to combat this, you have to really tune into your thoughts, and you have to actively reframe them into positive and affirming thoughts. And here's a couple examples that I think, you know, I wrote from my experience. I can certainly relate to this. So, you know, we might say, gosh, this is really too hard. I can't do it. My husband, this is a fun example. My husband was 6'5" and I am 5'1". And so reaching top shelves and, you know, putting things away, you know, I didn't have, for the time that he was there, I didn't have to worry about it. And it was really hard, you know. That's just a fun example. And I'm like, gosh, I can't do this, you know. And then I'm like, no, you know, even though it's hard, I do have the ability to figure this out, you know. Let me see. Even though this is hard, I have the grit and the intelligence to figure it out. And, you know, I recently went on a trip. I've been learning Korean for about a year, and I recently went to Korea. And you talk about a character building experience. And I remember it was a great trip. It was wonderful. I want to go back, but I had some challenging times while I was there. And I remember just, gosh, oh my gosh, this is really hard. And I caught myself saying, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, it's not. You've been through some hard things. I'm like, okay, I got this. I can do this. It's hard, but I can figure it out. And so even in that scenario, I was using this to reframe what I was experiencing there. But so I would encourage you to adopt this habit as well, as a way to work through some of the challenging mindsets that we have. And then baby steps. I think, you know, small improvements every day lead to big improvements over time. You don't have to do everything all at once. You don't have to do all of this, you know. Pick one thing that you can do. And you said, I do it in the morning. I'm not so great about doing it in the evening. That's fine. As long as you do it consistently at some point, during the day, even if it's every other day, but you come up with a pattern that works for you and your lifestyle that you can commit to and stick with. And if you miss days or whatever, it's all right. Give yourself grace. It's the process, but be intentional and consistent with whatever it is that you do. And dedicate time to it daily. You could use your phone or your calendar as a tool to set reminders and alerts. And sometimes what I do when I'm having a challenge and I'm really wanting to get my mindset right, I might write an affirmation and put it as a calendar item and have it, remind myself every day for however many days at a specific time. And that really helps me to get my mindset right about a challenge that I'm working on and writing it down. So these are, I shared with you the framework that I went through and some of the action steps that I took and resources that I used. And so, yes, this did help me to re-engage and reimagine my future and re-engage my career. But all of those things, what they really did was activate my hope to take steps on my behalf so that I could have a meaningful and purposeful future after my husband passed away. So again, some of this may be timely for you. For some of you, it may not quite be time for you, and that's totally fine. Take what you will and leave all the rest. So we have some time, and if you have questions, comments, and I see some great things in the chat, but if you have any questions or comments, there's time for that now.